At the beginning of this year, I reviewed a Nivada Depthmaster, so it seems appropriate that for the end of this year, I have this F77 model in for review. Now, for those that are not aware and may already be screaming at their screens, yes, this is Genta-inspired. But it's also vintage inspired by a vintage Nivada model, the original F77. Yes, way back in 1977, Nivada released their own Genta-inspired piece. We can say a Royal Oak inspired piece with the screws in the bezel and the integrated bracelet. Nivada, as you know, is a revived brand, and this watch is a reissue of that vintage piece. And while it is modernized, it does stay true to the original in many ways. At 37 millimeters with an integrated bracelet and a SoProd movement, the big highlight of this piece is that basket weave dial, as it looks good at every angle. There is a dome box sapphire as well, a screw down crown, and a water resistance of 100 meters. The current price is $1,260, so not exactly cheap. So let's check it out and see all that it offers. Now, I want to start out this review talking about the size specifically. A few weeks ago, I asked in a YouTube post what size most of you prefer. The majority chose 40 to 41 millimeter, 42% of the votes, and below 40 millimeter got 32% of the votes. Now, we only got around 200 votes, so those of you who didn't participate, hey, when you see a post, jump in and discuss. I would love to hear from you. But this watch was the catalyst for that post, as I see so much discussion, even in our own comment section, about size. If I do a watch such as this at 37 millimeters, I see people saying it's way too small. Why not 40? Why not 42 millimeter? If it's a 42 millimeter watch, I see it's too big. Small is the new big these days, they say. Make it under 40 millimeter. 39 millimeter is the perfect size. Now, of course, everything is subjective. We all have different tastes, and watch size discussion has been going on since the beginning of the internet and the old chat boards and forums. At 37 millimeters, I'm not going to lie, this is a small watch, at least for me and my 7.5-inch wrist. Nivada wants to stay true to the vintage sizing, and that's why this is 37 millimeters, same as the original. Now, I did see one report the original was 38 millimeters. I have not been able to confirm that, but Nivada claims this is the original size. Either way, this is not a large watch. The whole thing, including the bracelet, only weighs about 122 grams. So for the past week or so, I have been wearing this F77 and seeing how I feel about the size. I have always said specs don't tell the whole story, and there are so many factors in how a watch wears on the wrist. The case shape, the length of the case, the dial opening, etc. Some watches wear smaller, some bigger. I do feel this wears a bit bigger than 37 millimeters, but nothing crazy. It feels more like a 38 millimeter, and in saying that, I did enjoy wearing it, but I would prefer this much more at 40 millimeters. There is a lot of bracelets showing on the top of my 7.5-inch or 19.05 centimeter wrist. That said, I do consider it doable, though I would not daily this watch at this size. Okay, size out of the way, let's talk about what we have here. So we have a copy of a Genta design based on a vintage copy of a Genta design from the Nivada brand. And they were pretty faithful in this recreation. The basket weave dial is still here, the case shape is pretty much the same, and that bracelet design is extremely similar, including that integrated lug design, which seems to be a little controversial as some love it and others think it's hideous. The bracelet links are solid these days though, not folded links like they were in the past, and there are only two options now, date or no date. Most of the vintage pics I was able to find showed it as a day date, as you can see on screen. There are currently three color choices, this blue, a black, and the newest version recently added a smoked brown. Let's move right into the dial, this glorious basket weave dial. For me, this dial is the absolute highlight of this piece, the star of the show. It's such a beauty, and I love looking at it from every angle. The dome sapphire adds to the look, but when you get up close, you can really see the attention to detail with this basket weave. The rectangle markers are applied as well as an applied logo shield and model name. This is an extremely classic and clean dial and perfectly executed in my opinion. I can honestly say I wouldn't change a thing. Moving outside the dial, there's that box domed sapphire, very vintage looking, of course, and I believe the original was plexiglass, but these days, sapphire is king, and these box sapphires really do look great in my opinion. Then, of course, we get to the bezel. Now, I have no idea if these screws are functional. They are all perfectly aligned, which is nice, and I see no reason to attempt to take them off. But yes, in 1977, they copied the Royal Oak with this piece. The RO debuted in 1972, so 5 years later came this model. What does that tell us? Homages have been around a lot longer than the internet micro brands. It is what it is, and you either like it or you don't. The whole case alternates between brushed and polished, and that thin, angled mid case is highly polished, as is the crown. Oh, and speaking of that crown, a few things to talk about. One, even at 37 millimeters, this watch has a crown that I can use. The diameter is just about 5.7 millimeters, so it's not massive, but relative to the size of the watch, it's a big crown. Oh, and it's a screw down crown also. Yes, this watch is firmly in the sports watch category in my opinion, and not a dive watch, and Nivada easily could have gone the non-screw down 50-meter water resistance route like so many others do, but they didn't. So what we get here is a very versatile piece in my opinion that could be worn with jeans and a tee, but also dressed up, and whatever you're going to do with it while wearing it, you can do so with peace of mind that it can handle water and some knocks with this crown and water resistance. Like the Depth Master I reviewed, we still have the Soprod P024 movement, 38-hour power reserve, and pretty much identical specs to an ETA 2824. Soprod is part of the Festina group, and as we all know, this is far from the first ETA 2824 copy, and as such, I find this movement to be more than suffice, and I have not noticed any issues, at least not with this example. I think it's fine, but like a lot of these movements, I wish for longer power reserves. These are standard grade movements with an accuracy of plus or minus 12 seconds per day. Now, while you don't see the movements, you get a nice stamped case back instead. I would think for this price of just over $1,200, they would use at least an elaborate grade movement. The bracelet is integrated, of course, kind of the deal with this style of watch, so if you don't like integrated bracelets, well, this isn't the watch for you then. I don't much care either way, to be honest, especially when the bracelet is well made and looks good like this one does. I'm not much of a strap swapper these days, and I've just come to terms that certain watches you just can't swap the strap out on. The end-link design has some up in arms, I guess because it's like a cutout design inside the end link. Now, I don't mind it, and really probably I wouldn't even mention it had I not seen some commenting on it, but I want to know what you think. Let me know down in the comments, what are your thoughts on this end link design? Like I said, these are solid end links and they are screw in links as well, so they are very easy to size. I removed one link for my wrist. The clasp has a vintage look, but it's a modern clasp. Nice solid buttons, and nothing about this clasp feels tinny or cheap. And there may not be a quick micro adjust slider, but you do get 7 holes in the clasp, so you have a lot of room to play to get that perfect fit. Something else I find interesting is the measurements of this bracelet. At its widest point at the case, it's 22 millimeters. The next link immediately goes to 20 millimeters. Then it tapers to 16 with an 18 millimeter wide clasp. And since we're here throwing out measurements, the length of the clasp is 33 millimeters, so it's a pretty long clasp. Now, there is lume on this watch and it will light up for a few minutes, but as you can see, don't expect much. And you shouldn't. This really isn't the type of watch to have great lume, or any lume really. Honestly, I think they could have just left it off, and I don't think many would have cared. So what we have here is a reissue of a vintage design from Nivada, which is in essence a sort of copy or homage to the APRO. I think that releasing it now was smart, and the fact that they had it in the vintage catalog was cool, as they aren't just jumping on the integrated bracelet Genta homage like everyone else has been the past year or two, even though that they kind of are. But this watch has roots in the past, and all things considered, it's a hell of a nice watch with a phenomenal dial, a good build quality all around, and if you like 37 to 38 millimeter watches, well, it's right in your wheelhouse. Yes, I would love if they could offer two sizes, as I think this would be amazing at 40 millimeters, but that day may never come. They seem content on staying with the vintage sizing, and you know what? These days, that vintage sizing is very popular, so I say do what works for you. A lot of watches out there 40 millimeters and above from countless brands, so buy what you like to wear. I want to hear from you though. Get to those comments and let me know what you think of this F77 from Nivada. I've beat the size thing into the ground, but talk about whatever you like with this piece. Want to keep seeing Watch Report videos? You want to help out the channel? All you need to do is a few things, and it's only going to take a few seconds of your time. Hit that like button, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications on, and if you really, really want to help, share it on social media. I have everything linked in the description, including a link to my written review if you would like to check that out. This is Don Evans from Watch Report. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.